been using the iPhone 15 Pro pretty much since launch, and in that period a lot has happened, from the not so exciting stuff like overheating, burning, poor battery life, to the more exciting stuff like home screen customization, a much improved Siri which is tied in with Apple Intelligence even though it's still not available here in Australia. There's also recommended charge limits which helps with the overall battery health of your phone, plus so many other features I'll talk about a little later in the video. In a nutshell, the things I've mentioned sum up to these questions the average consumer would ask. Has it been worth it to warrant you keeping it, or should you upgrade to the 16 Pro? Well, say no more. In this video, I answered those questions in order to help you make the best decision moving forward. Buckle up and let's go for the ride. Kicking off with the not so exciting stuff, a few weeks after release, some people complained about their units overheating, and the news flew around the tech grapevine like wildfire, and at the time, Apple insisted that the overheating issue was because of a software bug and not the new hardware or design in the iPhone 15 Pro models. Personally, apart from the usual overheating that occurs when wirelessly charging, I didn't have any troubles with my unit, which clearly wasn't the case for everyone.
Good thing, not long after that, Apple rolled out an update that quenched the heat, and since then we haven't had any complaints about overheating.
Another notable issue that some iPhone 15 Pro users experienced was burning, and just like the overheating problem, when Apple released iOS 17.1, it resolved the problem.
Now, if you'd ask me, it's not that big of a surprise to me given the fact that burning usually affects OLED screens, and the 15 Pro has an LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED screen. Again, from a personal standpoint, my 15 Pro didn't give me any burning issues, but the one thing I did escape was the infamous battery life.
A decent number of people have complained about the iPhone 15 Pro's battery life and still complain to this date. In terms of longevity, it's been a lot better than the 14 Pro, but a tad bit behind the 13 Pro, and to be honest, I found this a bit surprising, putting in mind the 15 Pro comes with a bigger battery capacity, better heat dissipation, and an even better optimized software. 11 months on and I still can't make sense of it even after combing through multiple internet forums. Anyway, more on that when we get to the battery. Moving along, when it comes to performance, the A17 Pro chip has been an absolute powerhouse, and over the last 11 months, I haven't had any issues with my day-to-day usage, whether it's just browsing the internet, sending messages, or the more processor-intensive tasks like editing videos and photos, playing AAA titles like Resident Evil Village, and even then, it cuts through all of that without heaving. Speaking of not heaving, this is all thanks to the 3nm chip, which is the fastest on any phone, and with synthetic benchmarks close to the M1 chip levels, it certainly explains why we all noticed the 10 to 20% power increase on both the CPU and GPU. In saying that, for the most part, you won't really notice this doing the usual tasks I mentioned a little earlier. Where it's really shown is the camera, data transfer, and gaming, and I'll dive a little deeper into that in just a bit. Starting with the camera, the image signal processor has come in clutch when I'm taking photos, more so multiple photos at a go, and this happens without having any lag, and that's not all. The neural engine has also come in clutch by automatically detecting portrait mode subjects when taking photos, and the coolest part of it has been the ability to change the depth of field depending on the subject you choose, but more on that when we get to the camera. Moving along, we can't talk about performance without mentioning the iOS version. At the time of release, it launched with iOS 17, and now as it gets towards the end of its reign, the 15 Pro gets a test of iOS 18 but not in its entirety, and I'll let you know what I mean by that in just a bit. Starting with the display, it's been amazing to use whether I'm scrolling through a document or flipping through Instagram and TikTok Reels, all thanks to the LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED screen with ProMotion working behind the scenes. It's been super smooth switching between the different apps without experiencing any choppiness, and the best part is now you can customize the screen and place the apps anywhere you like, all thanks to iOS 18. By simply holding on the screen, then tapping on edit, then customize, you'll be able to change the look of your icons, and whether you want large or small icons, a dark, light or tinted theme, you've got it right at your fingertips. And if those are a bit too complicated for you, you can simply tap on automatic and the theme will automatically change depending on the time of day. Another home screen customization feature that got iPhone users excited is the ability to move your app icons anywhere within the imaginary grid lines. Now, if you'd ask me, I'm all for the changes, but I low-key liked how Apple's simple layout kept everything neat and organized. With these new changes, brace yourself for some disastrous screen layouts. Talking of layouts, the design layout of the iPhone 15 Pro got a few tweaks here and there, but for the most part, the design language remained consistent with what we've seen in the last 3 iPhone generations. Starting with the titanium build, even though it made the iPhone lighter, that's something I only noticed during the early days, but after a few months it didn't make that big of a difference. Something that made a difference though is the rounded edges, and I say that because the previous Gen 14 Pro would cut into my pinky after long periods of use, which isn't the case with my 15 Pro. As for the bezels, I like that they reduced, and even though we are talking fractions of a centimeter, it's felt more immersive than before when consuming content. Another change that I liked about the 15 Pro was the transition to USB-C, and honestly speaking, it took a bit of getting used to, especially during those early days as I found myself plugging in the lightning cable instead of USB-C. 11 months later, it's been convenient not having to carry an extra cable as most of my devices are USB-C. Another must-mention design change was the action button, and while it was fun and exciting to set button shortcuts when it first launched, 11 months on, I must admit I've barely used it. Now, I get this is subjective because there's lots of people who've created a whole ecosystem of shortcuts just from the action button. Moving along, the camera is another area that came out guns blazing at launch, and after iOS 18 updates, it also got some good quality of life improvements. Starting from the outside coming in, the outside looks exactly the same as the last 3 generations of the Pro iPhones, but on the inside, there's a lot at play on the software side of things. To put it into perspective, you'll notice the reduction of lens flares, a lot more light coming in when using the ultra-wide camera, and holding it side by side with the 14 Pro, you can clearly see that, and that's just scratching the surface. Using 24 megapixels as the standard iPhone lens has been amazing over the last 11 months, and this is without any compromise to the dynamic range, post-processing or shutter lag. I've also liked the option to switch from JPEG to HEIF file formats when taking photos, and that's because the HEIF file format is nearly half the size of the JPEGs. Being a content creator, this has come in clutch on the storage front, as I usually shoot multiple thumbnails to switch around whenever the algorithm doesn't vibe with the one I originally posted. For the average consumer, this also comes in handy on the storage front, especially if you like to take photos, and the best part is, even though the image quality has gone up, the file size increased by just 1.5 times, and it doesn't stop there. In that small file, you still get the portrait and live photo data. Speaking of live photo data, you no longer have to be in portrait mode to get all that shallow depth of field. Once you've taken your photo, you can adjust the focus of the subject to bring out the bokeh for that perfect cinematic photo. I've also enjoyed using the different focal lengths added to the main camera, and from only having 24mm, now we have a tight 28mm and an even tighter 35mm lens in the mix. When it comes to video, Apple continues to stay ahead of the pack, and that can clearly be seen in the quality of the 15 Pro's videos. And to put that into context, Apple's Scary Fast event was entirely shot on the 15 Pro, which goes to show you how good this camera is. To add to that, you can now shoot in log, which is basically a flat color profile, and then color grade it in post. The catch is you have to plug in an SSD because of the size of the log files. Personally, I prefer making my work easier and not shooting in log, but every now and then I tend to do so. When it comes to the camera changes after iOS 18 updates, you'll now be able to record video and listen to music at the same time, which for the gym lovers like me who don't like their music interrupted while recording a personal best is an absolute game changer. Once the recording is done, it obviously goes to the Photos app, and this is another area that got a complete overhaul, and I must admit the new layout looks a lot better compared to the previous gen. For those who haven't picked it up, you'll notice we no longer have the tabs at the bottom. Then for the media types, you'll have to swipe left to access all the media files. In addition to that, we now have a search bar at the top that pulls up photos, videos and screenshots depending on the prompt you input. For instance, if I search rugby, anything in my gallery related to rugby pops up, which is quite handy, and if you'd ask me, Apple Intelligence definitely has a hand in that. Speaking of Apple Intelligence, the 15 Pro has enjoyed some of the features the last 3 months of its reign, and whether it's the new improved Siri, calculator and app changes or writing tools, iPhone 15 Pro users are loving it, but not all of them have experienced it. This is because the features have only been rolled out to a select few countries, and to put that into perspective, I've got the latest iOS version in 18.1, but the features haven't been dished out to Australia yet. That aside, the new improved Siri, writing tools, image playground, memory movie plus so much more are features I look forward to testing out. When it comes to gaming, like mentioned earlier, Apple in general has finally caught up with the rest of the market, all thanks to the A17 Pro chip. Games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil Village, just to name but a few, play with so much ease on the iPhone 15 Pro. Again, like mentioned earlier, these are not mobile versions, but what you'd play on your Xbox or PlayStation console, and that's simply impressive. On the flip side though, it's not as fun using the controls on the screen. That's why using an external controller like the SCUF Nomad is a lot more comfortable. In my opinion, the SCUF Nomad is the most ideal when it comes to mobile controllers. As for the battery, like mentioned earlier, it hasn't been a roller coaster ride for everyone over the past 11 months, with the most prominent issue being the now resolved overheating. Personally, mine has held up well, but I still can't get over the fact that a bigger and better optimized 15 Pro battery doesn't last as long as that of the 13 Pro. In saying that, I'm happy that we now have recommended charge limit, which comes in clutch in preserving the overall battery health of your phone. Another feature worth talking about when it comes to the battery is the introduction of USB-C, and honestly speaking, this was one of my favorite changes in the iPhone 15 lineup. After 11 months with the iPhone 15 Pro, it's clear that Apple crafted a device that, while stunning in its capabilities, is not without its flaws. The titanium frame, faster A17 Pro chip and enhanced camera system elevate the iPhone experience to new heights, and when you throw in iOS 18 updates, the allure gets even stronger, with Apple Intelligence introducing smarter, more intuitive features that make everyday tasks feel so seamless. In terms of use case, for the tech enthusiast who likes the latest and greatest, the iPhone 15 Pro boasts a much improved battery life compared to the previous Gen 14 Pro, ProMotion display, and photography prowess that makes it a joy for content creation and consumption. If you find yourself regularly pushing your phone to its limits, whether through gaming, videography, or multitasking, the iPhone 15 Pro won't disappoint. However, the differences between the 15 Pro and its predecessors, or even the standard iPhone 15, might not justify the hefty price tag, and that's because it hasn't been without its issues. The titanium build, though durable, has proven prone to fingerprints and smudging, and earlier in its life cycle, some users reported overheating during intensive tasks. In terms of battery, while improved, it still struggles under heavy use, and as for the camera, despite its strengths, it occasionally overprocesses images, leading to a less natural look. To sum it up, if your phone is primarily a tool for communication, social media browsing, and casual photography, the added features may feel like nice to haves rather than unessential, and that's because the improvements, while impressive, are incremental for everyday use, making it a luxury rather than a necessity. As we look ahead to the iPhone 15 Pro in just a few weeks, the question isn't just about what's new, but what you actually need. If your current device meets your needs, waiting another year or two might be wise, putting in mind Apple's innovation cycle always brings iterative updates unless there's a game-changing feature on the horizon we haven't heard about.
If you'd ask me, for those with the 13 Pro and upwards, you should be good to go unless you badly want Apple Intelligence features, in which case the 15 Pro would do the magic for you.
Well, there you have it, peeps. I hope this video helps you answer the question whether the 15 Pro is worth it and if you really need to upgrade to the 16 Pro. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. Here's another video detailing everything you need to know about iOS 18 updates and Apple Intelligence. Until then, people of the internet, I'm signing out. See you on the next one.